So directors are going to get familiar with your C-suite officers through the normal course of their duties. The officers give regular presentations at board and board committee meetings, and they get invited to socialize with the board after the board meetings or like in the midst of the meeting at lunch. But sometimes the director might want to gain access to a senior officer outside of the board meeting framework. Or perhaps the director wants to meet some of the rank and file employees to get a better feel for the company's morale and culture. Does that pose a problem? Today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanack, and I'm a big fan of yous. So that if you're a New York Stock Exchange listed company, the company's going to be required to address the topic of director access to management in their corporate governance guidelines. NASDAQ is silent on the topic, but many NASDAQ companies voluntarily do this as a best practice. They address it in their corporate governance guidelines. As a result, most companies have policies that are publicly available addressing the authority of directors to access senior managers and other employees outside of this board meeting context. So these policies might include certain restrictions or they might not. So here are 5 mistakes that are sometimes made when providing directors with access. 1, being too restrictive. 2, not being the gatekeeper beyond senior managers. 3, giving confusing messages to the rank and file. 4, interfering with whistleblowing. 5, allowing the pop-ins. 1, being too restrictive. So there really is a split in practice here. It's going to depend on the board's culture, which really means what is your CEO most comfortable with. If you have a CEO who wants to closely control which employees interact with the board, you're going to have to be heavily involved in managing this process. The CEO is going to have you be the person telling telling the directors the bad news. Some CEOs are so intense about this that even if senior managers have a one-on-one conversation with the director, they want a full report afterwards. They want to know every detail, everything that was said. Then you have the other extreme, with the boards have a policy that is outright open, allowing directors to access who they want without restriction. And this illustrates that management has nothing to hide. They permit directors to have direct access to management below the CEO level without CEO approval or any other restrictions or qualifications. And there are good reasons to allow this, such as providing directors with a more well-rounded sense of what the company is like and allowing directors to meet one-on-one with senior managers to evaluate if they might be good candidates to serve as a CEO one day down the line. I know a number of companies that go as far as requiring each director to meet with a different member of management every quarter or after every board meeting as part of a continuous education program that also doubles as CEO succession planning. 2, not being a gatekeeper beyond the senior managers. So I prefer the middle ground here, where directors have open access to those that are regulars at the board meetings, the treasurer, head of internal audit, head of HR, obviously the CFO. But directors need to seek permission beyond that. This requires directors to inform the CEO and/or the corporate secretary in advance of their request to access these specific managers or other lower-level employees. This allows for some coordination in fulfilling the request, and in practice, these advance notifications tend to be more of a courtesy than a rule, just to ensure that the access is not disruptive. But in some cases, the director needs to be talked out of it. There might be sound reasons why a director visit is not a good idea, at least at this time. Maybe the manager they want to talk to is about to get fired. Maybe there's health reasons. Maybe they're just too busy. And maybe it's the specific director who's asking, it's them, not you. 3, giving confusing messages to the rank and file. So when it comes to the general employee population, it might not be a good idea if a director visits because it could be disruptive. Employees might freak out wondering what the true purpose of the visit is. Is the company up for sale? It's unusual for a director to meet with the rank and file on their own because employees aren't accustomed to interactions with the board and can get confused, not to mention that this is where the risk of micromanagement by a director becomes more real. Rank and file employees accidentally receiving mixed messages or conflicting directives might then cause them to act out against their real superior. Of course, this risk can be easily overcome if a manager accompanies the director. The counter argument is to an outright ban for this sort of thing is that a visit by a director can be a real morale booster, can really boost the spirits of that particular business unit that's being visited. So some companies specifically permit this type of access in their policy with the directive that directors should not provide direction to the employees during these meetings. 4, interfering with whistleblowing. Then there are those unusual circumstances where directors should reach out to the rank and file to kick the tires like whistleblower claims involving senior management, finding out what's really behind that complaint. The ability for anyone in the company to communicate compliance issues if they're hesitant to raise them with their superior can be critical to mitigate the potential damages if it's not brought up earlier and then it grows into a full-blown crisis. But this also must be balanced by the risk of directors getting misinformation from a disgruntled employee, you know how that can happen, who seeks to retaliate by getting the board involved with their squabble with their boss. And then note that audit committees of listed companies are required to establish procedures by which employees and others can report on an anonymous basis if desired, concerns about accounting, internal controls, and auditing matters. I have a separate Vid-Guide about that, a link to which is beneath this video. 5, allowing pop-ins. Sometimes a director's request isn't geared toward accessing a particular manager, but rather triggered by visiting a particular location where the company has operations. This might be because the director is curious about a particular site, wants to observe the operations there, or maybe the director is headed to that destination anyways for a vacation or a business trip unrelated to your company and simply wants to pop in and wants to stop by. This could be this could be fine, but again, it's wise for the director to be accompanied by a manager at that location to enable the director to get the most out of the visit and to avoid disruption. So you definitely don't want a director just to pop in unannounced. Good night, Detroit.